So hello, welcome again to this webinar integrating a Lightroom gallery with a WordPress website. I'm going to show first of all, my name is Eric Bernskjold. I'm a web designer, WordPress expert at XLD Studios, and I do all training for Bernskjold Media as well. Today I'm going to show you how to get a gallery that you export inside of Lightroom, and you export it normally without any tricks to it, but how you get it showing up inside of a WordPress site just using a few WordPress tricks here. So we're gonna do a custom template in WordPress, which is my way of doing this. And this might sound very technical right now, but I promise you it's not going to be that difficult. But once you've set this up once, so the one time, it'll just be working inside the WordPress admin panel for the rest of ever you want to add new galleries. So you need to do this once, but it's gonna be a really, really good display. So let me show you first of all how this is going to look. I'm just using a fresh install of WordPress using the brand new 2011 theme, which I happen to think is really, really beautiful. And right in here, I happen to have a WordPress gallery, as you can see. There are a bunch of photos in here, and I can go back and forth between the different photos. I can open them up. I can go between them, and I get everything that I would have gotten if I just had the gallery. So let me go and open the gallery, just so you can see that I'm not doing any tricks. If I go here to wp-dev/gallery/my-gallery, which is where I've exported this gallery outside of Lightroom, you can see that this is just a standard HTML gallery coming out of Lightroom. So there's no tricks in the Lightroom part. And we're going to start in a minute, once I've gone over what we're doing, by exporting in Lightroom, preparing from there, and then ending up with the gallery inside of WordPress once we're done. So what I have, again, is just the normal gallery, just as I would have exported it. Now, if you're noticing, my URL is a bit weird, and that's just because I'm running a local server right here on my computer using a lovely application called MAMP, and that's why my URLs are gonna look just like this. But don't worry, think about wp-dev in this case as yourdomain.com, whether that in my case would be ericbernskjold.com, in your case it could be anything. So that's the only little trick that I'm using to customize this. All right, so let's get started here. We're going to turn to Lightroom first. So I'm going to close down Safari for now, because we don't need it just yet. And I'm going to open Adobe Lightroom 3. Now, this works in past episodes of Lightroom, so there's absolutely no need to have Lightroom 3 installed, but I'm using Lightroom 3 for this example. So I thought I'd begin in the library module by just selecting a few of all of these images that I shot at a recent workshop hosted by a friend of mine called Glyn Dewis. And during the workshop, we shot a lot of cool photos of Steve, who was our model for the day. And I wanted to make a little gallery showing this. So I'm just going to quickly, let's increase the thumbnail size here and just quickly go through here and see a couple of the photos I want. So I definitely want this shot of Glyn right there. Let's grab that. Now these ones here are mainly not finished, but let's say I wanted to show a few of the in-camera shots here. So let's go through. This one's kind of nice. This one's kind of nice. Let's pick that. And let's do one final here with the backlit Steve and the Steve punching the ground. And now I have a few photos that I can use for my my gallery. So let's just put them in a collection real quick here. Let's turn on the filters. I want to filter this based on pics. Like that. Create a simple collection here. Include selected photos. And I'm going to name this Steve Gallery. All right, so now that I have this collection, we can easily pop over to the web module. And I've got all these photos in the film strip, and I wanted to make sure I highlight here, use all film strip photos. Because that's the way we want this gallery to work. Now, the trick to actually having the Lightroom gallery embed in a really nice way is to use a gallery that beautifully embeds in your template. And this is where you're going to have to open your website for the first ever time. And in this case, it's just to check what type of a background do you have. So I'm going to go to WP Dev here, which serves as my website. And I can see that, yes, I have a very white and a solid white background. This means I should probably go and use this white template that's inside of Lightroom, or at least make sure my background is white if I want to embed it in as beautifully as I can. If I were to choose another color, it would look, at least to me, much more constructed and not as easily embedded into WordPress. So what I'm going to show you today is how to embed the HTML gallery, because when it comes to the Flash galleries, they can work, but they are not as easy to do the templating method that I'm going to show you today. They require a bit more complexity to them and changing of a few more files. So let's focus on the HTML galleries first, which I'm going to show you now. And then at the end, I'm also going to show you how you can use the WordPress plugin to grab photos specifically, bypassing the web galleries that Lightroom generate, but it's also a really good way of getting photos on a WordPress website, and it can sometimes look even better than the Lightroom galleries. So I'm going to show you that at the very end, but that's a long way from now. So let's start. Going back into Lightroom, I can customize this default HTML gallery if I wish, but I'd prefer just looking here in the Lightroom templates, and I can look and try to find a gallery that is what I want. And I really like the pure white HTML here. It gives me the starting point that I want. You can have a look if there's any other ones that you like. You might also have a look at the clean HTML. If you want the blue here, if that works with your theme, I don't think it does in mine. So I'm going to have pure white, which means when I hover, you're going to see the 1, 2, 3 titles, and here you go. It works just as expected. But I do want to customize this gallery because I'm not happy with the way it looks by default. So what I'm going to do is just, first of all, site title. I'm going to get rid of that, right? Because we are inside of your website. Don't need the site title. If you want, you can change the collection title here and remove that, and instead make the collection title the site title, right? So you can have it display basically anything you like here. What I also usually prefer is to leave the site title out of this, also leave the gallery description out of this, and just use the gallery, not doing any text, and adding the text on the WordPress page. So that's what we're going to do right now. I'm also going to leave the contact name and the link out of here, just to generate the basic gallery that I'm going to embed into WordPress. And following that, I don't really need the identity plate, so I'm not going to use that for this time. All right, so color palette, I'm fairly happy with the colors that are. You can change it. Again, if your theme has other colors, you definitely want to change the background to match the background that's in your theme, and you definitely want to perhaps do a round trip into Photoshop to find out what HSL values your hexadecimal probably background of your website is. So if you find out the background hexadecimal code and you paste that into Photoshop, you'll get the HSL values that you can go and get into Lightroom. And if you want to customize the hover effect, you don't want it to be gray, maybe you want it to be blue or red or green or any other color that is the one of your theme, you can change that right in here. So what I want is I'm going to keep scrolling down here. Let's section borders. Well, these can be nice. I'm going to leave them out. Again, just generating a clean gallery. Cells, this is just how many how many you want. It works in any setting. Again, this is at your discretion. I'm going to go to the image page. And I'm really going to crank up the image here. Let's do 600 at the size. In this case, of course, you can select your photo borders. I'm going to leave them off. Let's continue here. Image info. Sure, title, caption, that's fine. Let's watermark that. Let's not watermark that. Let's standard sharpen. And we're pretty much done, I think. So here we have the index. It looks fine. And I think this looks just fine to go ahead and export. Now, here's the deal. I'm on a local machine, so I can pretty much FTP it to myself, but I'm going to go ahead and click export. What you'd want to do to get it up to your website is definitely to go to upload settings, click edit on the FTP server, go ahead, type in the server, FTP, your domain dot whatever, your username, your password, and then browse to the server path, selecting where you want it. Finally, you want to save this preset as a new preset in Photoshop, perhaps naming it WordPress Galleries, right? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go click export. I'm going to export this, and you can also do that and use a secondary FTP program, which isn't as nice, but it works, right? I'm going to save it. I've already created a folder here in my WP dev directory, which is my base directory on the web host. And I've created a galleries directory because I like that way of keeping my files organized. What I'm going to do is I have my gallery and my gallery 2. These are just some test galleries. But what I'm going to do is save as, and let's save them as Steve Photos, right? Steve Photos. Click on save. And since there are so few photos in this gallery, basically just these 9, actually, let's go ahead and fill up with a few more than 9. Just to make this a bit more interesting, because in order, you saw earlier that it works fine with more photos, and I'm sure you're going to trust me, but if I just add a few more photos, we can be sure that I'm not messing with you saying something is going to work when it actually isn't. Alright, so dragging in a couple more web gallery. The downside is that I'm going to have to do this again now. Alright, so whoops, not all 82, thank you. Let's use the Steve gallery, use all the film strip photos, and here we go. Now we have 2 pages. So if I export this again, let's export it to Steve-Photos, and let's replace the gallery we had. Right, that's quick as well, 13 photos. And now we're done inside of Lightroom, as soon as Lightroom's finished exporting. So this is when you can actually go ahead and start thinking about WordPress, because we have the base gallery. This is now the integration really comes into play. What I'd basically like to do in my vision is, looking at this, I would like to, within these white boundaries of the content area, I'd just like my gallery to show up, basically. And this is what I'm going to show you how to achieve. I'm going to use Dreamweaver as my coding application, but you can use Coda, you can even use Notepad, doesn't really matter. But Dreamweaver is a nice one, and I have it on my computer, so let's launch Dreamweaver. I've already gone ahead and set up a site here. If you haven't, you go to Manage Sites, click on New, type in a name and a folder, and as you can see, if I go in and edit this site, name and a folder, local folder where you store your files. Then you go add a server. I've added my local server here for testing. You can add an FTP, SFTP, local network, WebDAV, or RDS servers. And so you'd add this FTP address, again, username, password, everything, to your WordPress website. And when you're done with this, you get the added bonus of actually accessing your WordPress installation. So what I have in the Files asset browser, let's close this down so we get some more space. In the Files browser, in the Files panel, I have all the files related and are in this WordPress development folder, including my galleries, which we're not going to touch just yet, But I also have, say, the WP Contents folder, which is, if you have dabbled in WordPress theme designs before, you know that the WP Content folder is where your themes and your plugins are in WordPress. So don't fear, we're going to actually modify a theme using code here. And to do that, and it's not going to be hard, I'm going to open WP Content, open Themes, open my theme, in this case 2011. Now I know not all of you are using 2011, but the steps that I'm going to do here are the same for all of the themes out there, because this is how themes work inside of WordPress. So this is going to be the same process, but the code might look just a little bit differently. All right, so I'm going to find a page.php file. So it's going to be called page.php. And normally that outputs and styles every single page. And since this is a default file that every theme pretty much needs to have, it's not going to be that hard to find. So let's get down here. The page.php contains some comment code here. It gets the header of the site, does some HTML, does some PHP stuff right here. Where it says, in this case, get template part, this is what I'm just going to delete that and comments template. What you want to make sure when you look at your theme is that it's going to say here, it says the post. In a lot of themes, it's going to say while have posts, and then a colon, and then the post. You're going to want to keep that in, right? And you'd also want to keep end while and end if. And this will usually start after that with a div. So it's going to look like this, div ID, and then it's going to probably say post-php the ID. So it's probably going to look like this, and then after a while it's going to end with a div, and then it's going to look like this, right? So, and it's even before that, it's going to look like this. So you want to do between the end while and the starting the post, you're going to want to get rid of everything inside of there. And what we're going to do here is a little bit of, let's say, custom PHP code for WordPress that enables us to turn this file into a template that we can forget about later on and just use inside of the admin panel, not having to worry about this ever again. So there's a little bit of setup to this. Let's start by naming this template. And to do that in WordPress, you go find the starting PHP tag. If it doesn't exist, you type in, the open PHP here. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do, first of all, let's zoom in here. I'm going to do a line. Then I'm going to do a /, an asterisk, a new line. I'm going to type, no, not template, template, then space, then uppercase N for name, colon, and now I'm going to type in the template name that I want, and I'm going to call this White LR Gallery for White Lightroom Gallery. Then I'm going to new line, asterisk, and / again. Right, that's the start code right now. Let's save this file. Oops, actually, let's not save this file. What we want to do, I'm going to go back, save it, and then redo this. Go ahead and save this file as. And this is the kicker. We've said that this is going to be the template for a White Lightroom Gallery. And to be able to apply this to a page in WordPress, it needs to have this template name tag, but it also needs to be called something. And this doesn't really matter, but it needs to have another file name. So I'm going to name this, not page.php, but I'm going to name this, let's say, save page-white LR gallery template. Right, that's fine. Or we can do, not to confuse it with WordPress naming schemes, let's do template white LR gallery. So let's save it to this. WordPress is going to find this file, don't you worry about that. But now it's time to do one more thing, so that this isn't just another normal page. I'm going to go ahead here And after get header that you see right here, I'm going to start an open PHP tag. Then I'm going to type in, what we're going to do is actually get a custom field from WordPress. And I'm going to pass that. This is a bit codey again, but you can just copy this. But I want to make sure you follow what I'm doing. I'm going to go and get this custom field value. And then I'm going to pass that to a variable in PHP so that I, at any place in my code, can just tell this to appear. That's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to do PHP, then I'm going to do $. And this is where you can make up your variable name. Right, so I'm going to do gallery link space equals space. And now I'm going to use a WordPress function. So go to Safari, go to new tab, go to Google. And I'm going to Google, in this case, I know it's get post meta. And you get the lovely WordPress codex in which you can find how to use this get post meta function. And here you see the reference. You use it, get post meta, post ID thumb. Okay, this looks good. I'm going to grab that, paste that in, finish that off with a semicolon, and then just close the PHP tag out. Dreamweaver is going to tell me no syntax errors, which is good. And basically what this does, it's going to get some metadata from the post, and it's going to do it from the post which we are in. So this is going to be a template, so it doesn't matter which page we are in WordPress. It's going to default to get this custom field from that page, whichever we're on. And the name of this custom field, we're going to type in here in the middle, which is going to be, in this case, I'm going to choose to name it the same as my variable, which is just my standard common practice, which I find nice to do. So I'm going to go gallery link, and then just leave the true at the end. Now, wherever we want the gallery to show up and be included, we can just type an echo, in this case in PHP, out this variable. That's really what we're going to achieve. So after the post, which basically initializes the post feature inside of WordPress, I'm going to go ahead, first of all, do h1, and because I removed a bit of PHP. If you didn't, you can probably keep whatever you're going to find is called the title. You probably want to keep that, right? It's going to be the title of the page. And then I think you're going to want to keep the content too, but everything else you can just get rid of. But I want the title to be printed right here, and I want the content to be printed right here, which is whatever you enter in the body text in WordPress. But now I want the gallery to appear. And to do that, I'm going to use an iframe. Now you might think, what, an iframe? Iframes they're old. What this is the 90s? Well, iframes, as it happens, are still very good and they're solid use. In this case, I'm going to make sure to use an iframe that doesn't ever get scroll bars, and that's the key. You're never going to really see that this is an iframe. So iframe, src for source, and here is what I'm going to do. Do a PHP open. Let's type echo space $, gallery underscore link, finish up with a semicolon, and close the PHP. Right, this is pretty much the only coding you want to do. I'm going to do, say, a width here of 100%. So as wide as my template is, or as wide as it allows the iframe to go, it's going to go. And then I'm going to do a height. And I had 600 as the height of my largest image, so let's try and see how 700 will work here. I don't want too much overhead, or actually let's try 650. I don't want too much overhead to make the page scroll when it doesn't have to, but I don't want to have too little to make it be scroll bars. So I'm going to close that tag off and then just close that. So it's going to look like this, right? Now, I'd love to provide you with this template, but the fact is it's going to depend on the template that you're using for your site to, what you need to remove, what you need to add. But in essence, it's going to look something like this. It's just this little bit of code that can be longer and could also have some end if and end while here. As long as you keep this between the start where it says while and before it's going to say end while, and you make it look just like from the start of, this is the start of the while, and then you start with the H1, the title, follow with the content, and then the iframe, and after that you see the end while. That is going to be a key recipe for success. Right, so with this I can save this file, right? And let's forget about files right now. So let's go ahead, go to Safari. Now remember, first of all, remember where I exported this gallery. So it's going to be in galleries. Oh, I can't access that, but it's going to be in Steve. Wasn't it Steve-Photos, right? So this is my gallery that we're going to use. Fairly straightforward, simple, works as expected. And I want to remember the URL of this, right? So let's copy the URL of that before we forget that. So let's go back to WordPress. Let's go to Add New. Actually, let's go to the dashboard first. Let's go to Pages. Let's go to Add New. And so I'll just answering a question. Possible to get the text larger? Sure, I'm going to make sure I zoom in on the text in just a minute so you can see the code that I used, right? So add new page in the pages section. And what I'm going to do is call this whatever I want the page in WordPress to be. So let's call Photos of Steve. And this is where whatever I type here is going to be in the content. So I'd say a description of the gallery. So photos shot at the workshop where Steve was a great model, right? Over here on the right hand side, you're going to find template. And you want to choose White LR Gallery, which is the one we just created, which is really nice. If it doesn't show up, sadly, you've done something wrong. In this case, it does show up, which is beautiful. So we're not going to do anything much in here, but you want to go to the custom fields. If you don't see custom fields, which there's, if you've recently installed WordPress, there's a good possibility you don't. So you need to go up, go to Screen Options, and you want to enable custom fields to show on your screen. Let's hide the screen options again and go down, and you should see custom fields. If you or a plugin have added custom fields before, they'll show up here. If you haven't, it'll just be an empty text box. If you have, click Enter New. It's going to turn into a text box. And I'm going to now remember what I did in the code bit here, which is to call this gallery link. I'm going to type the name here, gallery _ link, making sure it's exactly the same. And then I'm just going to paste the link in. Click Add Custom Field. Publish the page. Go to view the page. And guess what? Voila. Here is the gallery. All the photos are in here. It works just as you would expect. With the iframe model, you could do this with any Lightroom gallery. So there are two ways you can achieve this bit, but the easiest and best way is with the iframe. That means you could potentially also include flash galleries, right? So it takes just a little bit here to set up your gallery template, but once you've done it, all you need to do is create new pages in WordPress and adding the gallery link. So let's just have a look at how that process would go. I'd go to Lightroom, and this time let's go ahead, and I'm going to select the Airtight Simple Viewer Gallery. And I'm going to make it the background, and I'm going to go and make it completely white. At least I'm going to try to make it completely white. And let's border. That's going to be white, white, white. And you can just configure this. I'm going to leave the configuration here. Just going to make it sure I export this. It's going to call this Steve2. It's going to go ahead. Flash galleries normally take just a tad longer to export. Now remember, we had gallery/Steve photos before. We're going to end up with gallery/Steve2, and right now it just hasn't finished exporting. So we have to wait just a little bit to have it export. Once it's ready, we can go ahead and just have a look at our gallery, see how it looks. And it is finishing, and here we go. It's loading. If I reload, here we get the gallery on white. So fortunately, that's something in Lightroom. Even if you select the background white, it sometimes remains at a gray, which makes it really hard to configure. But realize that it's going to be white and just try to get over that. But we have the white. I'm going to make sure here to, let's say, do we have an index.html? Yes, we do. So I'm going to grab that link. And let's go WordPress. Add new. Let's call this gallery just Steve. Not there. So I'm going to skip that. Let's choose gallery link. Paste in. So once you've entered in the custom field, it's going to be there forever. So you need just to paste in the URL in the value field, click add custom field, choose the template, white LR gallery in this case, publish, go to view page, and here you go. A simple viewer gallery right inside of WordPress, and we exported this just using Lightroom. This is probably one of my favorite ways of taking a Lightroom gallery inside of WordPress. And you can do it with other WordPress plugins. And I mentioned at the top of the show that I was going to show you how you can do that. So this is just a little bit of an extra. If you feel uncomfortable in the way, if you'd like to get another display than the Lightroom HTML galleries or the Flash gallery, because Flash is almost out of, Flash is not popular right now. So if you'd like to get HTML galleries, let's just show you how you can do that in probably a nicer way. So I'm going to go again back into the dashboard, and I'm going to install a plugin right here. So I'm going to choose Find, and I'm going to search for Next Gen Gallery. Search for the plugin, and let's see. Oh, not there. Let's try NG Gallery. I know it's in here somewhere. There we go. Next Gen Gallery. Click Install now. Yes, I'm sure. It's going to download. It's going to do its thing. And I'm going to activate the plugin. And I've got an added gallery down here. So this is a full-featured gallery system. You add galleries. So let's just add Steve. Add gallery. And here's what you can do. You can upload images one at a time into the gallery. And you can upload the zip file. And you can also import an image folder. And that's what I wanted to show you, importing the image folder. Because this is almost as easy as dealing with the web exporter in Lightroom. You just select the photos that you want. You go to export, file export, or just click the export button. It's exported to, let's go ahead and choose a specific folder. In this case, you'd want to upload it via FTP, right? But in this case, I can just go ahead, go to my site, find the WordPress dev folder, and let's do it inside of Gallery WP content. Right, so I'm going to do like that, and let's choose, actually, let's just choose that. Type it in subfolder, let's do Steve2. Oops. And let's just skip the renaming, skip that. Just click export with the default settings. It's going to go ahead export these 13 JPEG files, and it's going to take a little while because it's now compressing them and making them web ready. But once it's done, and I uploaded it to the WP content, path and folder, I just need to type Steve2 in here. And what it's going to do, of course, if I didn't know, I can hit browse and it's going to bring up here a selector, so I can choose Steve2. I'm going to click import, and it's going to go ahead after import folder, create thumbnails. And if I go on the left hand side to manage gallery, I get my gallery called Steve2. With this, I can just create a page right from here. It's called, well, Steve2. And finally, if I just quickly go there, go and visit the site, go to Steve2, obviously it doesn't show up. So let's see, what did I do to make it not show up? Let's have a look at the Steve2 page. And Gallery, ID2. Everything has its bugs when it comes to web design. But as you saw, Lightroom way really works beautifully as long as you keep and, make sure it's going ahead and choosing the right URLs. It's going to work just fine. I'm just going to see what it is that's causing. I'm in the options for this. So let's see. Here you go. Let's try with the permalinks on ones. What's good about the NG Gallery is that you can potentially even enable this gallery inside of posts. So if you add new post, you can get and go to a gallery. In this case, let's do Steve. Show an image list. Publish the post. And in the end, you're going to get the Steve gallery in a post in this case. And it's going to show up in the Steve2 gallery as well. But it gets this nice lightbox effect when you do it this way. That you can scroll back and forth between the different photos that you've taken. And this is all HTML, so there's no Flash involved in this. And this is just a little different of a way to just look at galleries, created them with Lightroom and going ahead and using them. But using export instead of web, you can still get your images to WordPress without that much of a hassle. Instead, it just works and gets a little different gallery display. But again, that's a choice you have to make. Either you go ahead and you use the Lightroom web module, whether that's going to be the Flash galleries or it's going to be the HTML galleries that are built into Lightroom. This is your choice. Or any other gallery that you might be able to download and integrate into Lightroom. You can use any gallery that you can export from Lightroom. Or if you go ahead and export your images and upload them right in here. So it's not terribly more difficult doing it the export way, but it can be more powerful for your posts, being able to easily integrate it into posts and pages as you wish for WordPress. But again, you get the photos of Steve as a Lightroom gallery, and in this case, Steve as a Flash gallery, and it just works inside of WordPress from Lightroom 3. So that's essentially what I wanted to show you guys today. We've taken gallery, made it in Lightroom 3, got it into WordPress, and all it took was just a little bit of code. Now please, and I'm going to zoom in on the code here so you get a chance to see what I've actually done. If I can make it fit like that. So you just want to make sure you integrate the iframe at the proper place. And if you just do, you don't need to customize the page template too much anyhow. You can just go ahead and put this PHP code in anywhere below the get header part. I'd advise you to do that just to be on the safe side. And then enter the iframe code right here. And if you do that just below where it in your theme says the content, you're going to get it below whatever you enter in the post editor in WordPress. And if you just do those 2 code snippets right in here, you're going to have this working for you, I guarantee. Now, just remember, set up the custom field. Use the same name here as you do in WordPress. and this is going to work beautifully for you. So if there are any questions, now's the time to post them into the little questions panel inside of this GoToMeeting room. And I'll gladly answer your questions. And I really would, encourage you, if you do have any question at all, submit it. Even though I really like when you don't have any questions. I will post a copy of the iframe code and the PHP get post meta code on the Burnskilled Media website, which was for this webinar. So let's show you where this was. And I'll post it right there so you can get the code yourselves, and just be able to copy that right in. And if you do that, it's definitely going to, I promise you, it's going to work for you. So on this page, the events page for this webinar, I'm going to go ahead, post the coding questions. You can get it right there. Right, so unless there are any more questions, I'm going to go ahead and thank everybody for joining, integrating a Lightroom Gallery with a WordPress website. As it turned out, we managed to get a gallery out of Lightroom into WordPress without much difficulty, just a little bit of WordPress code. And don't be afraid of that code. I promise you, it's going to work just fine when you put it on your own website. So thank you for tuning in to this webinar. And hopefully I'm going to see you back on more webinars that we're doing. Next webinar that's currently scheduled is by Glyn Dewis, who on September 4th is going to show you how to do from photo to composite. And he's going to show you how to create this very photo of this bodybuilder with the composite and the textured background, because this is a photo that's just shot on a normal gray background. So don't miss that if you're a photographer. It's going to be a good, fun time with Glenn. So that's on September 4th, accepting registrations right now. Until next time, thank you very much for tuning in. Again, my name is Eric Burnskilled for Burnskilled Media. You can follow us on burnskilledmedia.com. Thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye.